39 years ago on this day, John Paul II was elected Pope, and he was quite a young Pope. The one before him was quite old, died in his 70s, and it was very short, John the 23rd, so they said, we got to get a young guy. The last guy was so short, let's get a young guy who'll be long. He traveled to 129 different countries of the world, way more than any other Pope. He canonized 483 people during his pontificate. He wrote volumes of works, and he moved the whole world. He was kind of a moral compass for the world. And I have a quote that he said to youth at Toronto at World Youth Day. That was, I think, 3 years before he died. We are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We are the sum of the Father's love for us and our real capacity to become the image of His Son, Jesus. That was to World Youth Day in Toronto. We are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We are the sum of the Father's love for us and our true capacity to be the image of Jesus. Beautiful quote, really beautiful. In our first reading, Cyrus is called by God. Now, Cyrus is a pagan, not religious leader, president, if you will. And it says God called him by name, though he didn't know it. That's worth a lot of meditation. How many times in our life has God provided for us and we didn't even know it? How many details and circumstances of our life came to bear for a blessing and goodness, God's hand, we didn't even know it? One of the really good things Christians can do is give thanks, and sometimes just a ritual, daily ritual of thanks will help us see some of those details. But God has called you, young people, by name. Each one of you by name. And you're not here tonight even, just by chance, because God's providence is leading you. So Cyrus was called by name, and in the gospel today there's these people trying to trip up Jesus and trap him. And he's got this coin of Caesar, and they say, should we pay the tax or not? And Jesus said what? Don't pay taxes, just give tithes to the church. No, we don't even take up a collection here, do we? Jesus did advocate for legitimate authority. At another point, he tells Peter to go fishing and catch his fish, and he takes out of the mouth of the fish a coin that's worth 1 full shekel to pay a tax for Peter and him. So actually, he does advocate for authority, legitimate authority, but God's authority first. And in a sense, he says to us, if the coin that has the image of Caesar is Caesar's, who are you? Whose are you? Because you bear the image of God, right? If you bear the image of God, that means you belong to God. I had a young man came to the door of the seminary a few weeks ago, and he's walking in the door, and a bunch of my seminarians were coming in, and he looked like he was about 25, 28 years old. He asked if there was a place to stay. And I said, well, this is a seminary, and these buildings around us are dorms, and they have young people that live here, and so it's not really a hotel or a boarding place. But he wanted a place to stay. And he looked kind of slow, maybe a kind of street person. And honestly, in my own mind, I'm thinking, do I trust this guy? How do I discern what is his real need? Does he want to steal from somebody? What's his agenda? And he went away. I asked if I could help. In the end, he really didn't want a lot of help. But I came in, I prayed that night, and Jesus said to me in my heart, that was me. That was me. That's what Jesus told me. And I realized Jesus came to my door. And would I serve Jesus in the poor? I'm going to invite us to think about who might be the hardest person to see the image of God in for you. Who might be the hardest person to find God's image? Could it be somebody who really hurt you or picked on you? Would that be a hard person to find the image of God in? Or a parent who was neglectful? Could it be a poor person, as I met at the door? Could it be someone who has special needs? Maybe who is autistic? And can we see the image of God in all these people? The church fathers have this really wondrous commentary on the Old Testament book of Genesis. When it talks about, it says, God says, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. And a comment by some church fathers goes this way. Everybody has the image of God, but by sin, we lose the likeness. Isn't that insightful? We all have the image of God, but by sin we can lose the likeness to God. And yet, being created by God, there is a likeness. Now, I saw a movie the other day. I'm not necessarily proposing it for your viewing, but I was encouraged by a friend to do it, and I watched the movie The Shack. Anyone seen The Shack? One guy? That's it? 2? 3, 4, The Shack. All right, well, I was like, I'm not sure I want to watch this. It looks like it's New Age to me, and you know, I'm not into New Age. New Age is kind of like we're all a spark of God, and you know, we're all part of the cosmos, and there's really no talk of Jesus. And said, I don't need that. Well, the movie is very creative, and this guy goes through a lot of trauma. He actually killed his father, poisoned him. He had a third child who died, was killed by another. And he goes to this shack where his child died, but he ends up sort of in this little paradise. And the Trinity comes in the form of 3 people. And this is a little creative. And I'm not saying it's in Scripture. But one is a roughly middle-aged African-American woman. That's God the Father. Then God the Son is this Middle Eastern man, maybe 30-ish. And God the Holy Spirit's an Asian woman, so it's very not what you expect, okay? So I'm not advocating for all the theology. But here's one thing that took place. Well, there's a lot of truths in it. This guy ends up in this cavern or mountain, and there is a figure representing wisdom. And the guy is judging God, and he's saying, God, you killed my daughter. You're the cause of all this pain in the world. And then, so you want to be the judge, this wisdom figure says? Okay, you be the judge. You sit in the seat of judgment. And then shows the 2 other children he had, remarks on their sins, and says, which one do you want to go to heaven and which one do you want to go to hell? And he ends up saying, neither, take me. I will suffer for their sins. And there's this immediate revelation. That's what Jesus did. That's what Jesus did. And then he's invited to go into a lot of healing process of forgiveness and finding the image of God in the people who he's had encountered. The people who have sinned against him and who he's sinned against. The image of God is in the person right next to you. The image of God is in your family members. It's in the students that are easy to love and hard to love, and in your professors who are good and who are boring. All made in the image of God. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Give to God what belongs to God.